just want to formally thank you very much, Erwin Elman. Thank you very much for coming on to the show this evening, everyone. Erwin is a NDP candidate for Don Valley West, Ontario, and he's running for the NDP. Tonight he's going to be talking about affordable housing and accessibility. So I just want to thank you very much, Erwin, for your time this evening, and congratulations, actually, on your running for the party. This is wonderful. I know that you're quite ambitious, and very grateful to have you on the show, and to know that you're running for a party that wants to make great improvements for people in today's society in Canada, and I mean Ontario for sure.
Sure, thank you, Brent. Thanks for inviting me. We met through Twitter. That's an amazing way of meeting. There's good things about Twitter and social media, that's for sure. So I don't have a speech prepared. So
no, that's okay. We'll just.
But I do want to say a couple things, if I could, just to
for sure
explain a little about myself. So you may or may not know, it's true, I'm the candidate for the NDP in Don Valley West. There's an election in Ontario. The election is June 2nd. I've never been run for election before. I was a coordinator, a manager, developer of a youth center for 20 years, serving young people leaving care of children's aid societies and trying to support them. And then I was a director of service in a children's mental health center in downtown Toronto. And then I was the child advocate for the province of Ontario for 12 years. And I was I was the president of the Canadian Council of Child and Youth Advocates for Canada for about 10 years. So I have that experience, and, this idea of running is, I think I would say I'm as cynical about electoral politics as anybody that's joined us. I don't think you could be more cynical about it than me. I have been. But from what I saw as the 12 years as a child advocate, I felt, my mom's teaching, and she's passed now, just last year at 96, but she said, she used to tell me I wasn't responsible for changing the world because I couldn't. Nobody's responsible for that, no one person. But she also added, you're not exempt from trying. And so, election is a time when the voices of those who are not usually heard can be heard. That's my belief. I don't think that's how politics works right now, but it's certainly something I want to do as we campaign. So it's not so important what I think, but people like you and what your listeners think and say. And I wanted to say to them, I might talk about it later if they have comments or thoughts, or you do. I think it's really important for people to name the world, to say what their truth is. Not tell their life story or bleed on, young people used to tell me, we don't need to bleed on the carpet for you to know that there's problems. So I'm not saying that, but I think it's important to name the world. I think it's important to put that tweet out. I think it's important to write an email to a member of parliament. I used to think it's important to talk to your friend who might be going through something and listening. I think let them name the world. And I'll tell you why. It came from a First Nations writer to me when I was in First Nations communities. And they're very big on, he was saying that they rely on stories to pass history, oral tradition to pass history from one generation to the next. When I say they, it's not a pan-Indigenous thing, but he was talking about his community. So when we tell our stories, when we name the world, we're trusting people with something. So it takes some courage to do that, even to put out a tweet. But when you put it out, you've changed the world. I know that seems weird, right? How can a tweet change the world? Well, if somebody saw it, if you have 2 followers and one of them saw it, and they read it, it's their decision now what they do with it. You can't force them to do anything with it, but they cannot live their lives as if they've never read your tweet. They've read it after you sent it. You've changed their life. And that sounds trite, but sometimes it can be a really big thing to name the world. And you don't know what your naming of the world will end up influencing or creating or changing. You don't. But it's something we can all do, and it's something really important for people who are marginalized from their rights. I don't like the word marginalized when they talk about marginalized people, but when you're marginalized from your rights, it's really crucial, I think, to name it. Because if you don't, and we don't, nobody else will. So I wanted to just put that out there, and that's certainly one of the reasons why I'm running, and giving space to people to name the world that they're in the public square that an election is. And we'll do that in a whole bunch of ways during the campaign. Because campaigns, believe it or not, aren't, for me, it's not about getting elected. Of course I want to get elected, but it's about creating and influencing change. That's why I want to get elected. That's why I'm running. So I might as well do it now. Yeah, and that's why you reach out to me, Brent, and say, hey, do you want to come by? And I'm interested in listening to what people have to say and dialogue as much as I am in naming my own world and what I've heard and what I think. Not so important what I think. I know stuff, but I also know I'm missing something, and it's always good to focus on what you're missing more than what you already know.
Well, thank you very much, Erwin.
There's a speech. I told you I didn't have a speech, and then he goes ahead and makes a speech. I'm already a politician, Brent.
Well, there you go, Erwin, and well done. You know, and you know, and that's what I do. Sometimes I just get out and I just wing it. I just say the top of my head, and I gave speeches in front of our legislature before, and like one of the people up there under a tent says, Brent, do you have cue cards? I mean, do you know what to say? Oh, yeah. Well, where are the cue cards? No, I don't need any cue cards. I'm just going to wing it. And because what I say wing it is I say from the bottom of my heart what I believe in and what I stand for. And I've learned to just try to talk very calmly, collectively, and get the point out. And I say it in a respectful dialogue. That way, when things are not quite going the way that they should go, but they should go as a fundamental right for like housing or accessibility, affordability, whatever the case may be, things that I stand strong on, and I go with it, and it's always a great pleasure having guest speakers like yourself on, and that especially you're running and want to make change for the better, to make it a better society for people in so many ways. And I'm very grateful to have people like you on, that to listen to what people's lived experiences, what they go through, and feedback on what you're hearing on ground level, within your community, what people are wanting to see change for, and I mean the list keeps going on and on, right? And it's so nice, and to hear different perspectives, and as an ally, right? I mean, definitely, for people with disabilities across Canada, there's so much change that needs to happen, so much new modernization of policies that are written way back in the 1800s or 1900s, that policymakers have maybe made at that time, but things haven't really evolved with how things need to change in society, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, absolutely. One of the things that young people with disabilities would tell me when I was a child advocate is that they want to be seen as more than their disability.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be human beings. They want to be seen as people. And, lots of young people said that. Black young people said they want to be seen as more than their skin color. They want, young people in care said they want to be seen as more than a case file. And so people with disabilities, when they say we want to be seen as more than our disability, I think they're they're referring to a huge shift. And I think when you say, and I think lots of things haven't changed, and people, you tell me, but I think people with disabilities are probably fed up with saying what needs to happen. I mean, it's not as if decision makers, policy makers don't know. I don't think we need more studies.
No.
So why hasn't things changed? And for me, I think it comes down to what young people were saying. The culture continues where we continue to see, and maybe I'm wrong and you'll tell me, but I think culturally, as a culture in Ontario, Canada, we still see people with disabilities as their disabilities, as a problem to be solved, as people to be fixed. And that until that changes, we're not really gonna solve this. And I think that's why I think it's so important when people speak up and speak out, because, well, when you name the world, when you say what's going on, if you say, especially if you do it your way, Brent, when you say it calmly and strongly, nobody can disagree with you, because that's your opinion, it's your stance, it's your experience. Nobody can tell you you didn't have it. And so it's actually making yourself, forcing people to see you as a person. I think that's really crucial. I wish it wasn't the burden of people who are, I don't know, bad word, but oppressed in difficult situations. Shouldn't be their burden to have to force others to see them as people, but I don't know. It's helpful, and I certainly will be. I think allies are to speak up with you, not for you, and partner with you. And certainly that's what I want to do, whether I'm elected or not.
You nailed it, 150% there plus.
Which part?
Well, the part about disabled Canadians, being a burden, and that's kind of what I was going to amplify on that, is that Canadians with disabilities, I mean they're not a burden, but it's policymakers seem, well, they don't contribute into society. They're not taxpayers, or it's the narrative that's out there. But sadly, they're wrong, because they do contribute into society in so many ways. They contribute into their local communities. Of course, they need more money to do so, because the rates have been suppressed down, or oppressed. Yeah, I mean, depends on which wording we want to use, but yeah, you basically nailed it on that too. Is that it's not acceptable that in today's, I mean, we live in a wealthy country, right? So there's no reason why that nobody should be thriving in prosperity with the wealth that can be easily redistributed amongst everybody, and with it, excuses of, in the fiscal situation, it just doesn't allow the rates to be increased. Oh, well, we have to watch our budget, or, always these excuses that they give. Or, well, we're waiting on provinces because of transfer payments, or we're waiting on Ottawa to come up with the Canada Disability Benefit, or, like all these reasons, like, delay, study. Well, we got to study it. Well, they already, you nailed it on that one too, is, they've got all the information. They've done their studies decades and decades ago. They just, for some reason, don't want to incorporate that in. And having a strong advocate like yourself mentioning these things, wow, if I was in Ontario right now, Erwin, I would vote for you. Because,
then you're a cheap date. Then I'd say.
Well, there you go.
Be better.